The war had already taken too many lives. The North was bleeding, and so was the South. When Robb Stark caught Jaime Lannister at the Whispering Wood, it was a great victory for the young wolf. His men cheered, and banners of the direwolf flew high. In the original timeline, Robb treated Jaime as a valuable hostage, but in this story, things take a different path. Robb chose not to send Jaime to Riverrun or keep him under heavy guard. Instead, he had him locked deep in a cold, dark dungeon under dire conditions. He wanted to break him, not just hold him. Catelyn Stark was not pleased. She knew her daughters Sansa and Arya were in King's Landing, hostages of the Lannisters. Jaime, a Lannister prince, was her only chance to get them back. But Robb had changed after the war began. He was angrier now, more cold. He blamed the Lannisters for everything, their lies, their betrayal, their killing of his father. Keeping Jaime alive, but humiliated and beaten, was his way of showing power. Every day, Jaime was fed stale bread and dirty water. He was chained to the wall, and the Northern Guards didn't hesitate to throw a punch or spit at him. Jaime, once proud and arrogant, now looked like a shadow of himself. His golden hair was tangled, his jaw bruised, his wrists cut by the iron chains. But his tongue was still sharp. He mocked Robb in every chance he got, calling him a boy playing war. Robb ignored him mostly, but sometimes, when the nights were long and the war news worse, he would walk into the dungeon just to look Jaime in the eye and remind himself, "This is the face of my enemy." Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister was furious. When he heard that Jaime was captured and not treated like a noble prisoner, he sent a raven demanding his release. Robb didn't reply. He sent Tywin the sword Jaime had when he was caught broken in 2 pieces. Back in King's Landing, Cersei Lannister grew desperate. She feared for her brother's life, but she also knew that losing him weakened their power. She went to the small council, urging them to make an offer to Robb Stark. Gold, land, titles. But Robb didn't want gold or gifts. He wanted revenge. He wanted the Lannisters to bleed like his people had. The Northern Lords were divided. Some said Robb should kill Jaime to send a message. Others, like Lord Karstark, whose sons had died at Jaime's hands, wanted blood. But Catelyn begged Robb not to become like the men they fought against. She reminded him that mercy was a strength too. Robb listened, but his heart was full of fire. One cold night, Lord Roose Bolton visited the dungeon. He looked at Jaime like a butcher looks at meat. "My lord," he said to Robb later, "the Kingslayer's worth more dead than alive. Alive, he's a risk." Robb nodded, but said nothing. Brienne of Tarth, who had sworn to protect Catelyn, watched everything silently. She felt uneasy. Not because Jaime was suffering, he deserved much of it, but because she saw Robb changing. The young, honorable boy was slowly becoming a man shaped by war, by hate. The first major consequence came when Sansa, still trapped in King's Landing, was forced to marry Tyrion Lannister. Cersei didn't wait. With Jaime gone and no sign of a trade, she used Sansa like a pawn. Arya was still missing, her fate unknown. Catelyn's heart broke. She came to Robb in tears, begging once more, "Please, my son, use Jaime to bring them back, before we lose everything." Robb looked at his mother, then at the fire burning in the hearth. He knew war had made choices harder, but he also knew that every choice now had a price. Robb sat alone in his tent that night, the wind howling outside like a ghost's cry. His bannermen had gone to rest, but sleep didn't come to him easily anymore. His mother's words echoed in his ears. Use Jaime to bring them back. But what if he couldn't? What if the Lannisters were never going to trade? What if keeping Jaime alive was just giving false hope? The war council the next day was tense. Lord Karstark slammed his fist on the table. "The Kingslayer murdered my sons. Every day you keep him breathing, their spirits cry out for justice." Others murmured in agreement. Robb looked at the faces around him, angry, vengeful, tired, and he felt it too, this endless war grinding them all down. But Catelyn stepped forward again. "And what will you gain by killing him?" she asked sharply. "Vengeance? That won't bring your sons back. But if we use him wisely, we may still save my daughters." "Don't let your grief blind you, Lord Karstark." Karstark glared at her. "Your daughters, my sons are already gone." After the meeting, Robb found himself walking toward the dungeon again, torch in hand. He hadn't been down there in days. The smell hit him first: mold, blood, piss. Jaime was barely conscious, his eyes swollen, lips cracked, his once golden armor replaced by dirt and bruises. "You look worse every time I see you," Robb said coldly. Jaime chuckled weakly. "And you look more like a Lannister every day, boy." Robb clenched his jaw. "I could have you killed. Every lord in the North wants it." "Then why haven't you?" Jaime whispered. "Afraid I'll haunt you. Or maybe you need me." Robb didn't answer. He turned to leave. Jaime called out, voice hoarse but clear, "If you want your sisters back, you'll need more than steel and wolves. You'll need leverage, and I'm the only thing you've got." That night, a raven arrived from King's Landing. Tywin Lannister had made his move. The message was short and cold. "The Lady Sansa is wed. The North has chosen war. So be it." Robb's heart sank. Sansa forced into marriage to Tyrion. It wasn't just politics now. It was cruelty, and it was personal. Catelyn wept in her chambers when she read the letter. "They've destroyed her future," she whispered. "She was just a girl." Robb's anger turned to ice. His mother's sorrow, his bannerman's impatience, the horrors of war, they all pushed him closer to a dangerous decision. But fate twisted the knife further. 2 nights later, Lord Karstark's men, drunk on rage and wine, slipped into the dungeon. Jaime was asleep, tied to the wall. They beat the guards unconscious and dragged Jaime out like a sack of meat. One of Karstark's sons had once begged for mercy before Jaime ran him through in a battlefield skirmish. Now they wanted revenge. But before they could carry out the execution, Brienne intercepted them. Sword drawn, she stood in the corridor like a mountain of steel and fury. "Put him down," she growled. "That's the king's prisoner." One man lunged at her. It was a mistake. Brienne moved like thunder. In 3 heartbeats, 2 men lay groaning on the ground, one with a broken arm, the other missing a few teeth. By the time Robb arrived, more guards had gathered. Jaime lay bleeding, ribs likely cracked, but alive. Robb's fury exploded. He ordered the men who tried to kill Jaime hanged at sunrise. Lord Karstark stormed into the king's tent, spitting with rage. "You hang my men, you hang your allies. For him," he pointed a shaking hand south. "A Lannister, you've gone mad. You've defied my orders," Robb snapped. "They tried to murder a prisoner under my protection. A prisoner who butchered my blood." Robb didn't waver. "They acted without my command. They'll die." And so they did. At sunrise, Roop swung and Karstark watched his men choke and kick. Then he left the camp without a word. Half his soldiers followed him. Robb had held his ground, but at what cost? That night, as the fires burned low and snow began to fall, Catelyn sat with her son. "You're losing your allies, your friends," she said softly. all for holding on to your honor." Robb looked into the flames. "No," he said, "I'm not doing this for honor. I'm doing it because this is the only card we have left. And if I let emotions rule me, then I'm no better than the ones we fight." But even as he said it, a voice inside whispered, "War doesn't care who's right. It only takes." The morning after Lord Karstark's departure was colder than usual, not just in weather, but in spirit. Half of Robb's strength had marched away in the night, and every man left behind felt it in his bones. The young wolf had held to justice, but justice came with a price. Whispers spread through the camp like smoke. The North is breaking. The King's losing grip. We're marching to die. Robb felt it too. Fewer soldiers, fewer allies, and still no path to Sansa or Arya. Jaime was the last piece of leverage he had. But how long could he hold on to a broken, half-dead Lannister in chains before it all became meaningless? Inside the tent, Robb stared at the war map, eyes heavy. His bannerman offered nothing but tired suggestions and old arguments. Only one thing was clear. Tywin Lannister had no intention of trading Jaime for the Stark girls. The longer Robb waited, the more useless Jaime became. But just when hope seemed to crumble, a raven came from a place no one expected, Riverrun. It was from Edmure Tully, Robb's uncle. The raven said that Lord Walder Frey, yes, that Frey was willing to talk peace. He'd heard about the crumbling Northern Alliance and offered a proposal. If Robb agreed to a truce, perhaps even marry a Frey girl as promised, Lord Frey would offer a secret, a way to get Jaime to King's Landing. Not for a trade, but for war. Robb narrowed his eyes at the letter. "What game is Frey playing now?" he muttered. Catelyn warned him. "The Freys can't be trusted. They were insulted when you broke your promise. This might be a trap." But Robb was out of time, out of men, and quickly running out of roads. He decided to send a small party to Riverrun Brienne, the Blackfish, and a small guard. Not with Jaime this time, but with a message. "I'm listening." Beady lay coughing blood. His chains were lighter now, but the guards never stopped watching. One of them, a young northern soldier named Darren, had taken to talking with Jaime. Not out of kindness, but curiosity. "You really pushed that boy out a window?" Darren asked one night, eyes narrowing. Jaime didn't answer at first. Then a smirk twitched at the edge of his mouth. "Would you believe me if I said no?" "No. Then why ask?" Darren shook his head. "Just wanted to hear the devil speak for himself." Jaime gave a raspy chuckle. "You Northerners really know how to make a man feel welcome." But something was changing in Jaime. The humiliation, the beatings, the silence, it was stripping away the pride. He wasn't the golden lion anymore. He was just a man, alone, hated, and maybe for the first time starting to see what that meant. Back at Robb's camp, things turned darker. Scouts brought grim news. Tywin's army was moving, but not toward them. He was pulling back, retreating. Why would he retreat? One lord asked, confused. "He's not running," Robb said, staring at the map. "He's baiting us, drawing us south. And if we chase, we walk right into his trap." A deeper silence followed. Then another raven arrived, but this one didn't come from a lord. It came from a whisper, a letter, unsigned, sealed in black wax. Inside was a message written in elegant, cold handwriting. "If you want your sisters back, send the Kingslayer to Harrenhal. Alone." It was madness. A trap, surely. Harrenhal was a ruin, half ruled by bandits and worse. But the letter bore the sigil of a spider drawn in faint ink. Varys, the spy master. Only a few would recognize it. Robb read the letter 3 times. Catelyn read it once and paled. This might be our only chance. But what if they kill him the moment he arrives? Robb asked. Catelyn looked at him with tired eyes. Then we lose nothing. But if they keep him, maybe they'll deal. Maybe we get one of the girls back. Robb's mind raced. Send Jaime alone to Harrenhal? Let the enemy have him? Trust the word of whispers and shadows? Then Brienne returned from Riverrun. Her face was pale, her armor scratched. They're planning something, she said. Lord Frey's banners are gathering. They say it's for a feast, but the Blackfish thinks otherwise. Robb clenched his fists. He wants peace, he said bitterly, but not with words, with blood. Outside, thunder rolled over the camp. A storm was coming, and not just in the skies. The rain fell hard that night, soaking the northern camp in cold mud and silence. No songs were sung by the fires. No laughter rose among the tents, only the sound of steel being sharpened and wet boots trudging through the slush. The men could feel it. Something bad was coming. Worse than the battle, worse than Debittle, worse than defeat. It was the kind of silence that came before betrayal. Robb couldn't sleep. He stood at the edge of his tent, watching the storm hammer the earth, his thoughts turning to the black-lettered message. Harrenhal. The name itself sounded cursed. He knew the story's walls melted by dragonfire, halls haunted by screams. But if Varys was truly behind the message, then maybe, just maybe, there was still a game worth playing. He went down to the dungeon again, this time with a new look in his eyes. Jaime was awake, sitting against the wall, arms chained, face pale. His bruises had faded into yellow shadows, but his pride hadn't healed. Robb stepped in without a word, dropped the letter beside him. Jaime raised an eyebrow. Another love letter. Harrenhal, Robb said. You're being sent there. Alone. Jaime studied the seal. Then he laughed, a dry, bitter sound. Ah, so I'm finally being thrown to the wolves. No, Robb said. You're being thrown to the ghosts. If you survive, maybe they'll send me something worth the trouble. Jaime tilted his head. You think this is a trap? I know it is, Robb said, but it's the only one that hasn't already sprung. Catelyn protested when she heard of the plan. You can't send him alone. He'll vanish. They'll kill him, and we'll have gained nothing. Robb looked at her, voice low. If we keep him here, he becomes a weight around our neck. We're already drowning. Brienne stepped forward. I'll go with him. Robb turned to her. You trust him? I don't need to, she said. I swore to protect your mother. If this is her will, it's mine too. So the plan was made. Jaime would be sent south, escorted by Brienne, with a sealed message from Robb offering to negotiate once proof of life from Sansa or Arya was given. A desperate move, but desperation was all they had left. They left at dawn in silence, through a side road cloaked in trees. Jaime wore plain clothes, no armor, and his wrists were still sore from chains. Brienne rode beside him, sword always within reach. Neither of them spoke for miles. Meanwhile, at Riverrun, Edmure sent word Lord Frey had agreed to host Robb and his army in 2 weeks for a reconciliation feast. Robb knew what it meant, a final chance to fix what he'd broken by marrying Talisa, and maybe, just maybe, avoid more war. But Talisa, watching from afar, felt uneasy. She saw the way the lords looked at her, a foreigner, a distraction, a crack in the alliance. She loved Robb, but she feared for him. You don't have to go, she said softly one night. We can find another way. Robb kissed her forehead. There's no other way left. While the north moved blindly toward a gathering storm, Jaime and Brienne reached the outskirts of Harrenhal. Smoke rose from its black towers, and the air smelled like burned meat and rot. It wasn't just ghosts that lived there. Now it was worse. They were met at the gate by a tall man in strange armor. His eyes were hidden behind a steel helm with narrow slits. "No banners," Brienne noted. "No welcome," Jaime added. They were taken inside without a word, deep into the melted stone halls. Rats scattered underfoot. Firelight flickered across broken walls. And then, a voice. "Welcome, Kingslayer." Varys stepped from the shadows, dressed not in silk, but in grey travel robes. Beside him stood a woman with auburn hair, chains on her wrists, Sansa. She looked at Jaime, then Brienne, confused, afraid. Varys spoke softly. "The game has changed, and you, Sir Jaime, are the first move in the next one." Not because he cared for her. He didn't. Not really. But because in her eyes, he saw something familiar. That same trapped look he'd seen in Cersei once, long ago, when they were just children. Fear masked behind silence. Pride shattered behind calm eyes. She stood motionless beside Varys, her wrists still in chains, but her back straight. She had grown from a girl into something colder, harder. Jaime blinked, surprised. "Sansa Stark," he said, almost to himself. She didn't speak. She only stared at him, lips tight. Varys stepped forward, his voice smooth as silk, dipped in poison. "The realm has changed, Sir Jaime. You've been kept in the dark, but now you're useful again." Jaime smirked. "So I'm not dead yet. What a relief." Varys didn't return the smile. "King's Landing is boiling with madness. Cersei has tightened her grip. Tywin has grown restless, and your return might tip the scales. But not for war for exchange." Jaime raised an eyebrow. "You want to send me back to King's Landing?" Varys nodded. "In exchange for her." He gestured toward Sansa. "Or perhaps a chance to take Arya as well." Brienne stepped forward, tense. "You'll give her to us." "Not give," Varys corrected. "Negotiate. I can only offer the door. Whether the wolf walks through it is another matter." Outside, Harrenhal groaned under the wind. The castle felt alive, like the stone itself was listening. Jaime looked around, his mind turning slowly. He had expected to die here or be traded like a bag of gold. But now, he saw something else. A possibility. Meanwhile, back at Robb's camp, the news had spread. Jaime had reached Harrenhal. A new raven arrived, unsigned, with a message written in Varys's flowing script. "A piece for a piece. The wolf's daughter walks if the lion returns to the den." Robb read it 3 times. Catelyn's hands shook as she held the parchment. "They're offering to give back Sansa, maybe even Arya. You have to take it." Robb stared at the letter. "They might lie." "They will lie," she snapped. "But if we get even one of them back, if we save even one child, it's worth the risk." Talisa entered the tent quietly. She saw the paper in Robb's hand, saw the way his mother looked at him. "You're going to take it, aren't you?" Talisa asked. Robb hesitated. "I don't see another way." Talisa nodded slowly, but her eyes were distant. She didn't trust this. Not the Freys, not the Lannisters, not even the spider who whispered in shadows. A few days later, Robb and his bannermen set out for the twins. The feast was being prepared. The banners of House Frey flapped in the wind, and men lined the bridge with spears and false smiles. Lord Walder Frey greeted them with sharp eyes and false sweetness. "My Lord Stark," he said, bowing shallowly. "So kind of you to come crawling back." Robb didn't rise to the insult. "I come for peace, Lord Frey." Walder grinned with rotten teeth. "A shame peace is so expensive." Inside the hall, food was served, music played, and to the outside eye it looked like a celebration. But beneath the smiles, the tension cracked like dry ice. Catelyn felt it. She couldn't eat. She watched the guards too closely, her hand never straying far from the dagger at her belt. Then, during the feast, a Lannister song began to play. "The Rains of Castamere." Catelyn stood slowly, eyes wide. "Robb," she whispered. He turned to her. "What?" And then everything snapped. Swords came out of sleeves, arrows dropped from the rafters. Robb's bannermen screamed as bolts tore through them. Catelyn lunged forward, but it was too late. The Freys had planned everything. This was never about peace, it was punishment. Betrayal dressed as hospitality. Robb was struck first, an arrow through the chest. Talisa screamed and tried to reach him, only to be pulled back. Blood spilled across the hall. Chaos erupted. Catelyn grabbed a knife and held it to the throat of a Frey girl, screaming for them to stop. But Lord Walder only smirked. "The Lannisters send their regards." And in a heartbeat, it was done. The young wolf fell. The feast turned red. But far away, in Harrenhal, a raven took flight. A message for the Queen Regent in King's Landing. "The Kingslayer returns. The North has fallen. The war is shifting." And in a locked chamber, Sansa Stark wept because she knew her brother was dead. And now she was the last Stark they wanted to use. The raven from Harrenhal arrived at King's Landing just as the bells rang for Lord Tywin's latest victory. But the letter it carried was far more valuable than any battlefield report. It spoke of Jaime Lannister's survival and his return. Cersei tore open the seal with trembling hands. Her eyes ran across Varys's careful words. She didn't cry, she didn't gasp. She simply exhaled as if she had been holding her breath for a year. He was alive. But not only alive, he was coming home. The Queen Regent wasted no time. She summoned the small council, bursting into the chamber with her golden hair wild, her eyes sharper than steel. "Jaime is returning," she announced. Tywin sat back in his chair. "And what price did we pay?" Cersei hesitated, then spoke. "Sansa Stark. Possibly Arya. That's what Varys promised. He's been pulling strings behind our backs." Tywin didn't look surprised. The girl was a dead pawn. Now she's a useful one. Varys made the right move even if he played it alone. "I want her out of the Red Keep the moment she arrives," Cersei snapped. "I want no more games. No more Stark girls." Tywin's gaze hardened. "You'll do nothing until Jaime returns. Sansa is still your daughter-in-law, like it or not." Across the sea at Harrenhal, Jaime readied himself for the long journey. He had been given fresh clothes, food, even a horse. Varys had orchestrated everything. But before he left, Sansa came to see him one last time. She entered the chamber quietly, wearing a grey cloak that made her look older than her years. "You're going back to her," she said, her voice steady. Jaime turned to her. "It seems so. She'll want you to destroy me." Jaime studied her for a moment. "She might, but she won't get what she wants." Sansa raised an eyebrow. "Because you'll protect me." "No," he said simply. "Because you're not a threat anymore. You're a message." Sansa's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "They think the war is over now that Robb is dead." "Isn't it?" Jaime asked. Sansa stepped forward. "No, it's only changing." She handed him a folded note, small, sealed with wax in the shape of a direwolf. "Give this to Jon Snow," she said, "at Castle Black." Jaime hesitated. "Why him?" "Because he's all I have left." That night, Jaime and Brienne left Harrenhal, escorted by a few of Varys's trusted men. The journey was quiet, but Jaime noticed something different in himself. He no longer rode with pride, chest out, looking down on others. He rode like a man who had seen too much and lost too much to still pretend he was noble. Brienne noticed, too. She didn't say it, but the way she glanced at him now carried less hate and maybe just a little pity. Back in the north, the silence left by Robb Stark's death spread like a sickness. The northern lords were scattered. The Freys had taken the twins, and the Boltons had begun claiming power in the vacuum. Roose Bolton, cold and calculating, sent ravens declaring his loyalty to the Iron Throne. He was rewarded with the title Warden of the North. Winterfell, once a proud seat of the Starks, now lay in ashes, abandoned by Greyjoys, haunted by memories and filled with crows. But something stirred in the shadows. A boy no one expected had returned. Rickon Stark. Hidden by wildlings, protected by forgotten allies, he was being led back south, back home, by a man loyal to his blood. And across the narrow sea, whispers reached the ears of a silver-haired Queen Daenerys Targaryen. She heard of Robb's death, of the fractured north, of the boy king who'd tried to defy the Lannisters and paid with his life. She looked over her maps and smiled bitterly. "Good," she said. "Let them tear each other apart. I'll take what's left." In King's Landing, Jaime passed through the gates without fanfare. He looked up at the Red Keep, and it no longer felt like home. Inside, Cersei waited. But when she saw him scarred, tired, not the man she remembered, her smile faded. "You've changed," she whispered. "So have you," Jaime replied. But the space between them felt wider now, not just in distance, in truth. And from the corner of the Red Keep, Varys watched quietly, whispering to himself, "Pieces are always more dangerous when they learn to move on their own." The return of Jaime Lannister should have been a celebration in King's Landing, but it wasn't. There were no trumpets, no feast, no warm embrace from the Queen Regent. Cersei stared at him like she didn't recognize him, and in truth, she didn't. This Jaime was thinner, darker, quieter. The war had stripped away his arrogance like old armor. His golden hand was gone. In its place, scars both seen and unseen. "You're not the same man," Cersei said coldly as they stood alone in her chambers. "I bled for your war," Jaime replied. "I rotted in chains while you played politics with our father." Cersei stepped closer. "And now you're back. We can finally fix things." But Jaime didn't move. "Some things aren't meant to be fixed." Her eyes narrowed. "You spoke with Sansa Stark, didn't you?" "She asked me to deliver a message," Jaime said. "To Jon Snow." Cersei's lips curled with disgust. "You spoke to the girl we're trying to control. What else did she say? What poison did she pour into your ear?" Jaime's voice lowered. "She's not a threat, but she's not a fool either." Cersei turned away, furious. "She's a Stark. That's all I need to know." Jaime left her chambers without another word. The warmth between them was gone. Something had broken, and neither of them had the strength to repair it. He found Tyrion in the Tower of the Hand that night. The brothers sat in silence for a long while, wine between them. "You look like shit," Tyrion said finally. "I feel worse." They drank. "Did you really speak to Sansa?" Tyrion asked. "She's smarter than any of us gave her credit for," Jaime admitted, and colder. "She would have made a better queen than Cersei," Tyrion muttered. They both chuckled bitterly. "Why are we still fighting this war?" Jaime asked quietly. "What's left to win?" Tyrion didn't answer at first. Then he looked at his brother with tired eyes. Because none of us know how to stop. Far to the north, Jon Snow received the message. It arrived on a cold morning, sealed with the direwolf. Inside were only a few words, written in Sansa's careful hand. I am alive. They killed Robb. You are the last Stark left who can act. Winterfell must rise. Jon stood in the courtyard of Castle Black, the letter in his hand, the wind tearing at his cloak. He felt the weight of the north crashing down on his shoulders. He wasn't ready. He was the bastard, the watcher on the wall. Not a lord, not a king, but the blood in his veins was real, and now he had to decide. He looked to Sam. If I leave, I break my vows. Sam looked back. If you stay, you let them win. Meanwhile, in the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton stood over a new map of the north. His banners now flew where Stark ones once did, but he was uneasy. Reports had come of wildlings seen moving south. Old houses were stirring Manderley, Reed, Umber. The north, though quiet, was not dead. His bastard Ramsay entered the room with a grin too wide. I hear the Ironborn fled Winterfell like rats, Ramsay said. Should I go take it back? Roose studied him. Take it, yes, but don't just burn it. Fix it. The North needs to believe it has a new master. Ramsay smirked. And what of the wolves? Roose's eyes darkened. If any Starks remain, flay them. In secret, Varys continued his own game. He had already moved Sansa from Harrenhal. No one knew where she was now, not even Jaime. Only whispers told of a Stark girl hidden in the Vale under another name, guarded by old allies. The spider whispered into new ears, now nobles, merchants, even sellswords. He wasn't trying to save the throne anymore. He was preparing to replace it. And across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen watched from the top of Marine's pyramid as new ships were built under her banner. The lion tears out the wolf's throat, Ser Jorah said behind her. But the lion bleeds too, Daenerys replied. And when the fire comes, they'll all burn. Back in the north, Jon Snow stood in the dark, watching the flames in the hearth. He held the letter again, reading it one more time. Then he folded it. I'm going south, he said. Sam's eyes widened. You'll be called a deserter. Let them call me what they want, Jon said. Winterfell needs me. And so began the return of the North's last hope. Jon Snow rode through wind and storm, cloaked in black, but no longer a man of the Night's Watch. Not truly. Behind him rode a few loyal brothers who believed in something more than oaths believed in him. The North was bleeding, its heart torn out at the twins, but rumors traveled faster than crows. The bastard of Winterfell rides south, and in every village and broken stronghold he passed, eyes lit with something rare, hope. In the shadows of the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton watched the rising winds with suspicion. His informants whispered of bannermen who once bent the knee to House Stark, now refusing his summons. Letters went unanswered. Even the Iron Bank had grown quiet. He turned to Ramsay. The North does not fear us yet. Find something they fear. Ramsay grinned. Let me hunt Rickon, the wolf pup's hiding somewhere. Bring his head back. They'll remember who rules. Roose nodded slowly. Do it, and do it loudly. But Ramsay's hunt would not go as planned, for Rickon Stark was not alone. The wildling Osha and a small band of hill clans had protected him for months. They had learned the land, hidden in forests and frozen rivers, moving only by moonlight. They didn't fight with banners or horns. They fought like ghosts. When Ramsay's men finally caught up, only a few returned screaming of ambushes, poisoned arrows, and a dire wolf in the trees. Back in the Vale, under the alias Elaine, Sansa Stark watched from the high balcony of the Eyrie. She no longer cried, she no longer dreamt of songs. She listened, she learned, and in Petyr Baelish's whispers, she heard the truth about power. "They all want to be kings," he said to her one evening, wine in hand. "But no one wants to deserve it. And what do you want?" she asked. Littlefinger smiled. "To see the game reset, with you at the center." She didn't trust him, but she played along, because she was tired of being used. She wanted to be the one pulling the strings. In King's Landing, Jaime stood alone on the ramparts of the Red Keep, watching the city burn with rumors. He had fulfilled his part, returned the girl, kept the peace, followed orders. But he felt empty. He passed Cersei in the halls without speaking. The space between them had grown into a chasm. She was more cruel now, more paranoid. Her grip on the throne tightened daily, but it felt like a woman clinging to a crown made of smoke. One night, Tyrion came to him again. "You're thinking of leaving," he said. Jaime didn't deny it. "There's talk," Tyrion continued, "that the North has rallied behind Jon Snow." "He's just a bastard," Jaime muttered. Tyrion smiled. "So were you in your own way." A silence passed. Jaime looked down at his hand, the one that was no longer there. "I think I've outlived my purpose, Tyrion." "Then find a new one," his brother said, "before someone else writes your ending for you." Meanwhile, Jon Snow reached a broken farmhouse near Last Hearth, and there he found something he didn't expect. A banner with the direwolf flying again. House Umber had risen, quietly, without fanfare, and others soon followed. The North hadn't died with Robb. It had simply waited for the right wolf to return. Jon didn't claim lordship. He didn't speak of revenge. He spoke of home, of winter, of survival. And that was enough. The North began to stir. A murmur became a storm. Soon, Manderley joined, then Reed, then small houses that had once sworn to the Starks under the old gods. The news reached Roose Bolton's ears like a creeping poison. He ordered all ravens caged. He executed suspected Stark loyalists. He turned Winterfell into a prison. But it didn't matter. Jon Snow was coming. And then on a cold, clear night the North answered. 10,000 marched under a tattered wolf banner. Jon rode at their head, Ghost beside him. And as they approached the smoldering walls of Winterfell, Ramsay Bolton laughed from the ramparts. "You brought wildlings, traitors, and farmers?" He shouted down. "You brought ghost stories?" Jon said nothing. He simply raised his sword. The battle was long, bitter, and soaked in blood. But in the end, it was the sound of the direwolf's howl that echoed across the battlefield. Ramsay was dragged through the mud, broken and bloodied. Winterfell's gates opened. The North bent the knee not to a crown, not to a name, but to a man who bled for them. Jon Snow stood in the great hall, fires burning again in the hearth, and the silence that followed was not of fear, but of peace. Sansa arrived days later, cloaked in white, eyes sharper than ever. She walked up to him, looked him in the eyes. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left," Jon said. Together they raised the Stark banner once more over Winterfell. The lion had roared. The wolf had bled. But in the end, the North remembered.